My husband walked into his father's hospital room with his billionaire mistress on his arm, while I was the one holding the old man's hand. Not his son, not the woman in diamonds, me. I was the one sitting beside the bed at 2:17 in the morning, listening to the machines hum softly, wiping soup from his chin, rubbing lotion into his dry hands, and reading him the same 3 psalms because they calmed him when the pain medicine made the room feel strange. My name is Naomi Cole. At least, that was my married name then, before everything broke. Before the will, before the funeral, before the boardroom. Before my husband discovered that the father he had abandoned in his final season had seen everything clearly, even when everyone else thought he was too weak to notice. My husband, Adrian Cole, had always loved being seen as a devoted son. In public, he was perfect. He posted Father's Day tributes with long captions. He stood beside his father at company events, with one hand resting proudly on the old man's shoulder. He told investors that everything he knew about leadership came from the great Leonard Cole. He called him his hero, his foundation, his king. But when Leonard Cole got sick and needed quiet care, patience, and presence, Adrian became very busy. There was always a meeting, a conference, a flight, a dinner, a crisis at the office, a client who needed him, a project that could not wait. And then there was Cassandra Vale, billionaire heiress, real estate princess, owner of 3 private jets, 2 charity foundations, and enough confidence to enter any room like someone had built it for her arrival. She was beautiful, polished, and cold in a way expensive people sometimes mistake for elegance. Adrian called her a strategic partner, then a friend, then a major investor. Then, when I finally caught the way her hand stayed too long on his arm, he called me insecure. That was months before he brought her into the hospital room. Leonard had been in the private care wing for 3 weeks by then. His illness was serious, and everyone knew time was no longer something we could waste. He had good days and quiet days. Some days he spoke clearly, some days he slept most of the afternoon. But his eyes were still sharp, sharper than Adrian wanted to believe. That evening, I had been at the hospital since sunrise. I helped the nurse change his bedding, I organized his medication schedule, I called the specialist when his breathing became difficult. I handled messages from relatives. I updated the family attorney because Leonard insisted on knowing every detail about the company, even from the hospital bed. Adrian had promised to come by at 6. He arrived at 9:30, with Cassandra. She wore a cream designer coat, gold earrings, and perfume so heavy it entered before she did. Adrian wore a dark suit and the tired smile of a man who wanted credit for showing up late. "Dad," he said brightly, "look who came to see you." Leonard's eyes moved from Adrian to Cassandra, then to me. I was standing beside the bed with a plastic cup of water in my hand, wearing the same sweater I had slept in the night before, because I had gone home for only 40 minutes to shower and return. Cassandra looked at me and smiled. Not kind, not rude enough to call rude, just sharp. "Naomi," she said, "you look exhausted." I smiled back. Caregiving does that. Adrian frowned slightly. Naomi, one word, a warning. Even in his father's hospital room, he wanted me to behave nicely for the woman helping him betray me. Cassandra moved closer to Leonard's bed. "Mr. Cole," she said softly, "Adrian talks about you all the time." Leonard's mouth shifted. Not quite a smile. "Does he?" "Oh, yes. He says you built everything from nothing." Leonard's eyes moved to Adrian. "And what does he say he has built?" Adrian laughed too quickly. "Dad, don't start." Leonard looked at me again. "Naomi, did he come yesterday?" The room froze. Adrian's smile stiffened. Cassandra glanced at him. I held the water cup tighter. "No," I said gently. Leonard nodded. "And the day before?" Adrian stepped forward. "Dad, I had meetings." "You know how things are right now." Leonard kept looking at me. "No," I said. Cassandra's face changed. She had not expected truth. People like Cassandra often enter rooms believing truth will step aside for wealth. Leonard closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them again. Naomi was here. Adrian sighed. Dad, Naomi likes managing things. It makes her feel useful. Useful. The word entered the room like smoke. I looked at my husband. Leonard looked at him too. Slowly. Very slowly. Even in weakness, Leonard Cole had a way of making silence feel like a court order. Useful, he repeated. Adrian shifted. I didn't mean... Yes, Leonard said. You did. Cassandra smiled awkwardly. Maybe we should let Mr. Cole rest. Leonard ignored her. He lifted his hand slightly toward me. I placed the water cup down and held it. His fingers were thin, but his grip was clear. Naomi, he said, voice rough. Call Mr. Hart tomorrow. Adrian stiffened. Dad, why? Leonard did not look at him. Tomorrow. Adrian stepped closer. Dad, if this is about company papers, I can handle it. Leonard turned his head slowly toward his son. No, he said. You have handled enough. Those 5 words changed the air. Cassandra's smile vanished. Adrian's face tightened. Dad, you're tired. Leonard looked at me. I know exactly what I am. Then he closed his eyes. The conversation was over. Adrian walked out into the hallway 5 minutes later, and I followed because I knew a storm was coming. Cassandra stood near the nurse's station, pretending to read a message. Adrian turned on me. Why would you embarrass me like that? I stared at him. Your father asked a question. You could have protected me. I have been protecting you for years. His jaw clenched. Not in front of Cassandra. There it was. Not in front of Cassandra. Not in front of the billionaire mistress whose opinion now mattered more than his dying father's dignity. I lowered my voice. Why did you bring her here? She wanted to pay respects. She wanted to inspect the room. That is cruel. No, Adrian. Cruel is leaving your father's care to me, then walking in with another woman and expecting me to smile. He looked toward Cassandra, then back at me. You are making this about us. This is about us. No, this is about Dad. Then act like his son. His face darkened. You don't get to speak to me like that. I almost laughed. After all the nights beside his father's bed, after all the calls I answered, after all the meals I warmed, after all the fear I swallowed alone. He still thought the issue was my tone. Cassandra walked over then, smooth and calm. Adrian, she said, touching his arm, maybe we should go. This environment is too emotional. This environment. His father's hospital floor, my marriage collapsing under fluorescent lights. Too emotional. I looked at her hand on his sleeve, then at him. He did not move away. That was the answer. He chose her before he ever said the words. Still, when they left together, something inside me broke in a quiet place. I returned to Leonard's room and sat beside him. His eyes were closed, but he was awake. After a while, he said, he left with her. I swallowed. Yes. A tear slipped down my face. Leonard opened his eyes. I am sorry, daughter. Daughter. Not daughter-in-law. Daughter. That word undid me. I bowed my head over his hand and cried silently, while the old man I had cared for squeezed my fingers with the last strength he had. Before I continue, tell me where you are watching from tonight. And if you have ever been the one caring quietly while someone else performed love in public, stay with this story. Because sometimes the person lying in the bed sees more clearly than everyone standing around it. I met Adrian Cole 12 years before that hospital night. Back then, he was not cruel. At least, not in ways I could recognize. He was charming, ambitious, and full of warm promises. He had his father's last name, his father's smile, and just enough humility to make me believe he had inherited his father's heart, too. Leonard Cole owned Cole Meridian Group, a construction supply and property development company that had grown from one warehouse into a regional empire. He was respected, feared, and loved by people who understood that he could be strict without being unfair. The first time I met Leonard, he did not ask where I came from. He asked what I was reading. I was 26, standing in Adrian's parents' library during a family dinner, holding a book about organizational systems I had pulled from the shelf because social gatherings made me nervous. Leonard stepped beside me with a cup of tea. "Most people come into this room for the leather chairs," he said. "You came for the books." I smiled. "Chairs don't usually teach much." He looked at me for a long moment, then laughed. From that night, he liked me, not because I flattered him, because I did not. I asked questions about his company, real ones, how he managed regional distribution, how he handled supplier delays, why he kept certain warehouses close to old rail lines, why he had not expanded into hospital equipment logistics when the market was clearly shifting. Adrian beamed at first. "My girl is smart," he said. "My girl." I thought it was affection. Later, I realized some men love having a smart woman beside them until she becomes smart in a way that refuses to stay decorative. Leonard noticed everything. He once told me, "Naomi, Adrian has charm. You have structure. If he listens to you, he will go far." That was the problem. Adrian liked my structure when it carried him. He disliked it when it corrected him. We married after 2 years. It was a beautiful wedding at a garden estate, with white flowers, gold chairs, and Leonard crying quietly in the front row because he had loved Adrian's mother, Evelyn, deeply before she passed, and had raised Adrian mostly on his own. Patricia Cole entered the family later. She was Leonard's second wife, not Adrian's mother by birth, but she had helped raise him in his teenage years. She adored him in a way that was less motherly and more political. Adrian could do no wrong in her eyes, unless the wrong threatened her own comfort. Patricia liked me at first. I was respectable, educated, calm, a good wife for Adrian's public image. She called me our steady girl. Steady. Another word that sounds kind until everyone starts loading weight onto it. For the first years of marriage, Adrian and I were happy enough. We had a nice home, shared plans, and no children yet. I worked as an operations analyst, then consultant. Adrian worked under Leonard at Cole Meridian, learning the business from the inside, or pretending to. He loved investor meetings, public events, and strategy dinners. He hated warehouse walkthroughs, cost reviews, labor disputes, and compliance audits. Leonard saw this and worried. Adrian saw his father's worry as disrespect. "You think Dad doesn't trust me," Adrian said one night after a tense board dinner. "Like, does he? He thinks I'm not serious." "Are you?" He stared at me. "What does that mean?" "It means you leave the hard details to other people and then get angry when those people know more than you." His face closed. "You sound like him." At the time, I thought that was not an insult. To Adrian, it was. The older Leonard became, the more he leaned on me quietly. At first, just for small things, reviewing a report, organizing a vendor spreadsheet, sitting in on a transition meeting, helping Patricia understand medical insurance after a procedure. Then, when his health began to weaken, he called me more. Not Adrian, me. "Naomi, remind Adrian the Westbridge contract cannot be delayed." "Naomi, ask him if he read the audit notes." "Naomi, will you come by and look at these estate documents with Mr. Hart?" I always asked, "Shouldn't Adrian do this?" Leonard would sigh. "Yes." Then pause. "But you will." That sentence became our family pattern. Adrian should. Naomi will. By the time Leonard became seriously ill, my marriage had already begun cracking. Cassandra Vale appeared during a major development partnership. She was connected to Vale Global Properties, a family-owned billion-dollar real estate group. Her father owned hotels, towers, commercial land, and half the kind of rooms Adrian wanted to stand in. Cassandra was not just wealthy. She was access. Adrian saw that immediately. He started dressing differently after meeting her. Sharper suits, new watch, personal trainer, private dinners, business retreats. He said Vale Global was considering a joint project with Cole Meridian, and he needed to cultivate the relationship. I asked, "With the company or with Cassandra?" He laughed. "You're jealous." I was not jealous then. I was alert. There is a difference. Jealousy fears losing what it owns. Alertness recognizes a door being opened by someone who does not respect the house. Cassandra began appearing at events beside him. Not too close at first, just close enough. She praised Adrian's vision. She said Leonard's generation had built strong foundations, but Adrian could make the brand global. She called me gracious. That word made my skin crawl. Gracious is what certain women call you when they want you to step aside beautifully. At home, Adrian changed. Small insults, small absences, small corrections. You should dress more formally at these events. Cassandra says image matters. You don't understand high-level investors. You're too attached to Dad's old ways. You and Dad both think caution is wisdom. I said, caution kept the company alive. He replied, fear kept it small. Cole Meridian was worth hundreds of millions. Small. That was Cassandra speaking through him. Then Leonard's diagnosis worsened. Everything shifted. Or should have. A serious illness reveals family roles like bright light through thin curtains. Some people step forward. Some step back. Some perform. Some disappear. Adrian became a performer. He visited when board members were present. He brought expensive flowers that nurses had to move because they crowded the room. He posted photos of holding Leonard's hand, then left 15 minutes later for urgent strategy calls. He spoke loudly about specialists and treatment plans but did not know medication names. He called relatives with dramatic updates but forgot to ask whether Leonard had eaten. He kissed his father's forehead in public and ignored his private calls. I became the caregiver, not because anyone formally asked, because needs appeared and I answered them. That is how women become responsible for entire lives without a meeting. The nurses started calling me first. The doctors explained things to me because Adrian did not return calls. Mr. Hart, Leonard's longtime attorney, sent documents through me because Leonard requested it. I organized care schedules, managed visitors, handled Patricia's emotional swings, kept Adrian informed even when he barely responded, changed my work hours, slept in chairs, learned which soup Leonard could tolerate, read to him when he could not sleep, listened when he wanted to talk about the company, his regrets, his late first wife, and the son he loved but no longer trusted. One night, around 3 a.m., Leonard said, "I failed him." I looked up from the book in my lap. "Adrian?" He stared at the ceiling. I gave him too much applause and not enough accountability. I did not know what to say, so I said the truth gently. He is still responsible for who he becomes. Leonard nodded slowly. Yes, but parents set the weather. That sentence stayed with me. Parents set the weather. Adrian had grown up in sunshine he mistook for proof that he created light. Leonard knew that now. But knowing late is a painful kind of wisdom. The will had already existed for years. Adrian assumed he would inherit almost everything. The company shares, the family estate, the voting control, the investment properties, the foundation seat, and the private assets not already structured. He talked about it carelessly. Not in front of Leonard, in front of me. When Dad passes, we need to modernize fast. We need to move Patricia into a smaller role. We need to consolidate family assets. We need to position Cassandra's group as our first global partner. We. I noticed that his we had begun to mean him and Cassandra, not him and me. One evening, I asked, "Where do I fit in this plan?" He looked annoyed. "Naomi, don't make this personal. I am your wife. And you will be fine." Fine. The word men use when they have already reduced your place and want you to thank them for leaving a chair. I asked, "Are you having an affair with Cassandra?" He stared at me, then laughed. Not because it was funny, because he needed me to feel foolish. "You are exhausted. Dad's condition is making you emotional." There it was. Emotional. Caregiving made me emotional. His lies made him strategic. I stopped asking for a while. Not because I believed him, because Leonard needed peace more than I needed a confession. Then came the hospital night. Adrian arriving with Cassandra, Leonard asking if he had come the day before, Adrian calling me useful, Leonard telling me to call Mr. Hart. The next morning I did. Mr. Daniel Hart arrived at the hospital at 10 a.m. sharp with 2 associates, a locked briefcase, and the calm of a man who had handled wealthy families long enough to distrust tears until signatures dried. Leonard asked everyone to leave, except me, Mr. Hart, and 1 nurse as witness. Patricia protested. Adrian was not there. Of course, he had a breakfast meeting with Cassandra and Vale Global. Leonard looked tired, but his eyes were clear. Naomi, he said, stay. I shook my head. Leonard, if this is about the will, maybe I shouldn't. You should. Mr. Hart opened his folder. For almost 2 hours, they reviewed documents. Slowly, carefully, Leonard asked questions. Mr. Hart answered. The nurse witnessed his clarity. A second doctor had already documented capacity earlier that morning. I sat near the window, hands folded, trying not to hear details. But I heard enough. Trust restructuring, voting shares, care provisions, foundation control, spousal rights, revocation of certain assumptions, conditional inheritance. I heard Adrian's name, Patricia's, mine. I turned toward Leonard. Please don't do anything because you are angry. He looked at me gently. I am not angry. I did not believe him. He smiled faintly. I am disappointed. Different illness. Mr. Hart looked down to hide his expression. Leonard continued. Naomi, I am not changing my will because Adrian hurt you. I am changing it because he showed me who he becomes when responsibility becomes inconvenient. Tears filled my eyes. He is your son. Yes. His voice trembled. And that is why this is the hardest clear decision I have ever made. He signed that day. Not everything went to me. That is not how Leonard thought. He was not petty, he was precise. Adrian still received money, significant money, enough for a comfortable life if managed wisely. Patricia was provided for. Longtime staff were given generous gifts. Charity commitments were expanded. Certain family properties went into protected trusts. But control changed. Voting control of Cole Meridian Group did not go to Adrian. It went into a trust, overseen by an independent board, with me named as transitional chair and protector of Leonard's caregiver trust and foundation mission. The family estate where Leonard lived did not go to Adrian outright. It went into the Leonard and Evelyn Cole Trust, with instructions that part of it become a leadership retreat for employees, caregivers, and young entrepreneurs from overlooked backgrounds. A major personal investment portfolio was left partly to me, not as a wife, not as payment. As Leonard wrote in his letter, to Naomi, who remained when performance left. I did not know those exact words until later, but I knew enough that day to feel the ground shifting under a future Adrian thought already belonged to him. Leonard slept after signing. I sat beside him, crying quietly. When he woke, he said, "Don't cry for his loss. Cry for who he chose to become." That was the last long sentence Leonard ever said to me. He passed peacefully days later, with me holding one hand and Patricia holding the other. Adrian arrived 40 minutes after the call because he had been at a private dinner with Cassandra. When he entered the room and saw me standing beside the bed, something like guilt crossed his face. Then he looked at his father. For once, the performance disappeared. He cried hard, real tears. I do not doubt that he loved Leonard. That is what makes some people so painful. They can love someone and still fail them. They can grieve someone they neglected. They can cry over a loss they helped make lonelier. I stepped into the hallway and let him have the room. Even then, I gave him dignity. He repaid it at the funeral by seating Cassandra in the family row. Not front row. He was not that bold. But close enough. Close enough for whispers. Close enough for me to feel the insult. Close enough for Patricia to pretend not to notice. After the service, Cassandra approached me in the reception hall. She wore black silk and a diamond cross large enough to fund a small school. "Naomi," she said, I'm sorry for your loss. I looked at her. Our loss? She blinked. Of course. I smiled sadly. Did you know his soup had to be warmed exactly 4 minutes or he wouldn't eat it? Her mouth tightened. What? Did you know which psalm calmed him? Did you know which nurse he trusted most? Did you know he hated the blue blanket but liked the gray one? Did you know he could not sleep if the window blinds were fully closed? She looked away. I stepped closer. Then don't say our loss like you stood where I stood. Adrian appeared behind her. Naomi, stop. I laughed softly. Even at his father's funeral. Stop. Be gracious. Make room. Protect the image. I looked at him. You brought her here. His jaw tightened. She came to support me. No, Adrian. She came to measure what she thought you were about to inherit. Cassandra gasped. Adrian grabbed my arm lightly. I looked down at his hand. Remove it. He did. Good. That night, I went home alone. Our house did not feel like mine anymore. Adrian did not come back until after midnight. When he entered, I was sitting at the kitchen table with my wedding ring beside a glass of water. He looked at it. What is this? A decision. He sighed, exhausted. Naomi, not tonight. Yes, tonight. My father just died, and I cared for him while you built a life with another woman. His face hardened. There it is. What? You making yourself the saint. I stared at him. No, Adrian. I made myself present. You made yourself absent. He poured himself water. I can't do this. You already did. He leaned against the counter. I'm going to stay at the hotel tonight. With Cassandra? He did not answer. That was answer enough. I nodded. Then go. He looked surprised. Maybe he expected begging. Maybe anger. Maybe tears. He did not expect permission. He left. And that was the last night we lived as husband and wife. The will reading happened 2 weeks later. Not in some dramatic old library like movies. In a conference room at Mr. Hart's law office, with leather chairs, bottled water, and a long table that smelled faintly of polish and expensive tension, Adrian arrived with Patricia. Cassandra came too, though she had no legal reason to be there. Mr. Hart looked at her. Ms. Vale, this is a private family estate meeting, Adrian said. She's here with me. Mr. Hart replied, that is emotionally interesting and legally irrelevant. I almost smiled. Cassandra's face flushed. She left the room, but not before giving Adrian a look that promised punishment later. Patricia sat stiffly. Adrian looked confident despite the funeral tension. He had spent 2 weeks speaking like the future chairman of Cole Meridian. I had heard from a board member that he was already discussing transition plans and fresh global vision. Fresh global vision. Leonard had not even been buried a week before Adrian started redesigning his empire. Mr. Hart began reading. At first, everything seemed normal. Charitable gifts, staff gifts, care provisions, Patricia's residence and income support, a trust for certain family obligations. Adrian leaned back slightly, waiting for the main course. Then Mr. Hart reached the company control section. His voice remained calm. Voting control of Cole Meridian Group shall be transferred to the Cole Stewardship Trust, to be overseen by an independent board of trustees. Naomi Cole is hereby appointed transitional chair and trust protector for a period of 5 years, with authority to approve or reject executive succession decisions, major asset sales, merger proposals, and controlling partnership arrangements. Adrian sat forward. What? Mr. Hart continued. Adrian Cole shall receive a non-controlling financial interest as outlined in Schedule B, subject to the conduct and governance provisions detailed in the trust. Adrian stood. No, Patricia whispered. Adrian. He pointed at Mr. Hart. No, that's wrong. Dad would never do that. Mr. Hart looked up calmly. Your father did do that. Adrian turned to me. What did you do? There it was. Not what happened, not why. What did you do? Because in Adrian's mind, a woman receiving authority must have taken it. I sat still. I cared for your father. His face twisted. You manipulated him. Mr. Hart's voice sharpened slightly. Mr. Cole, your father's capacity was documented by medical professionals, witnessed properly, and the documents were reviewed over multiple sessions. I would advise caution before making accusations. Adrian breathed hard. Patricia looked shaken. What about the house? She asked. Mr. Hart turned pages. The primary Cole estate shall be held in trust under the Leonard and Evelyn Cole Trust. Mrs. Patricia Cole has protected residence rights in the East Wing and income support. The property may not be sold, mortgaged, transferred, or used as collateral by Adrian Cole. Patricia closed her eyes. Adrian slammed his hand on the table. That was supposed to be mine. Mr. Hart looked at him. Your father was aware you believed that. That sentence was a blade. Adrian looked at me again. You poisoned him against me. No, I said quietly. You abandoned him in front of him. The room went silent. Adrian's eyes filled with rage. I was working. You were with Cassandra. He flinched. Patricia gasped softly, though I knew she knew. Mr. Hart looked down at his papers, allowing truth to sit without legal commentary. Adrian said, You're enjoying this. I shook my head. No, that is the saddest part. I loved you. I loved him. I loved this family. None of this feels like winning. He stared at me. Maybe he saw tears in my eyes. Maybe he did not care. The rest of the reading continued. The personal portfolio. The foundation. The letter. Mr. Hart handed me Leonard's sealed letter last. I did not open it there. I could not. Adrian stormed out before the meeting ended. Patricia followed him. I remained seated until the room emptied. Mr. Hart sat across from me. Naomi, he said gently, Leonard trusted you because you did not ask for what he chose to give. I cried then, harder than I had allowed myself to cry since the funeral, because I did not want the company. I did not want Adrian's inheritance. I did not want Cassandra's shock. I wanted Leonard alive. I wanted my husband to have been better. I wanted my care to matter before it became legal power. But life had given me documents where love had failed. So I opened the letter. Leonard's handwriting was shaky but clear. My dear Naomi, I have watched people mistake loud love for real love. You were never loud. You were present. You did not perform care. You gave it. I am sorry my son did not understand the value of the woman standing beside him. I am not giving you control to punish Adrian. I am giving you control because the company must be protected from hunger dressed as vision. Adrian will receive enough to live, but not enough to destroy what others built. If he grows, he may earn trust. If he does not, the company survives him. You owe no one silence. You owe no one your health. You owe no one a marriage that treats your care as convenience. You remained when performance left. That is character. With gratitude, Leonard. I folded the letter against my chest and cried until Mr. Hart quietly left the room to give me privacy. Adrian challenged the will. Of course. Cassandra encouraged it at first. So did Patricia, though she later pretended she had only wanted clarity. Adrian's lawyers argued undue influence, weakened capacity, emotional manipulation, improper exclusion from meetings, and suspicious timing. Vivian Hart joined my legal team for the trust defense and divorce. Yes, divorce. Because after the will reading, there was no marriage left to pretend over. The case became ugly quickly. Adrian's side tried to paint me as the ambitious caregiver who isolated a sick man and turned him against his son. They called me controlling, strategic, cold. They suggested I had overstepped as daughter-in-law. They said Leonard had been vulnerable. Then the records arrived. Hospital visitor logs, nurse statements, doctor capacity notes, messages from Adrian canceling visits, photos posted by Cassandra during times Adrian claimed to be at the hospital. Emails from Leonard to Mr. Hart months before the final signing, expressing concern over Adrian's judgment. Board meeting notes showing Leonard had been worried about Adrian long before the illness worsened. Text messages where I repeatedly encouraged Adrian to visit. Text messages where Adrian replied, "Handle it, please." 3 words, "Handle it, please." The entire marriage could have been titled that. In deposition, Adrian was asked how many nights he spent at the hospital during Leonard's final month. He tried to estimate. The lawyer showed logs. 2. I spent 23. Patricia spent 9. Adrian's face reddened. Then they asked about Cassandra. He claimed she was a business partner. Then they showed hotel reservations, private dinners, and messages. He stopped answering freely after that. The undue influence claim weakened, then collapsed. Leonard had been clear, documented, consistent, and, most importantly, right. Adrian's board allies began distancing themselves. Cassandra's father withdrew Vail Global from active partnership talks because wealthy families can tolerate scandal only when the money is worth more than the smell. Apparently, Adrian was no longer worth the smell. Cassandra stayed at first, then began appearing less. Then stopped coming to hearings. Then her assistant returned a diamond bracelet Adrian had given her, which Vivian said was the most expensive goodbye note I have ever seen. Adrian called me after that. I did not answer. He sent a message. "We need to talk." I forwarded it to Vivian. She replied, "No, he needs to adjust. Different thing." The divorce finalized a year later. I kept what was mine. Adrian kept what the court deemed his. The trust provisions remained intact. His challenge failed. He received his inheritance under the conditions Leonard set, but no control. Patricia kept her protected residence and income support. The company remained under the stewardship structure. I became transitional chair. That role was not glamorous. People imagine board power as luxury. It is mostly documents, hard meetings, and people smiling while testing whether you understand what they hope you don't. I understood enough, and when I did not, I asked questions until the room stopped trying to confuse me. Some executives resented me, some respected me, some waited to see if Adrian would regain influence. He did not. At my first board meeting, one senior executive said, "Mrs. Cole, with respect, this company has always been guided by family leadership." I looked at him. "With respect, Mr. Daniels, that is exactly why Mr. Cole created the Stewardship Trust." The room went quiet. "Good," I continued. "We will honor Leonard Cole by protecting the company, not by pretending bloodline is a business plan." That became the new direction. We stabilized Cole Meridian, paused reckless expansion, reviewed all Vail-connected proposals, strengthened employee benefits, created a caregiver support program in Leonard's name, funded leave for workers caring for seriously ill relatives. That mattered to me, because I knew how invisible caregiving could become. I knew what it meant to sit in a hospital room while people praised the absent son. The Leonard Cole Care Fund became one of the company's proudest programs. Employees wrote letters. Some said it saved their jobs. Some said it allowed them to sit beside parents, spouses, children, siblings, and not choose between love and rent. That was legacy. Not Adrian standing in a suit beside Cassandra, not boardroom speeches, not global vision. Care made visible. Leonard would have liked that. Adrian came to see me 2 years after the will reading. Not at my home, at the company office, by appointment. That alone showed growth. He looked different, still handsome, but tired around the eyes. The expensive confidence had faded. Cassandra was gone. Patricia had moved fully into the east wing of the estate and spent much of her time with church friends and charity committees, carefully avoiding any mention of how close she had come to losing comfort because she enabled Adrian's entitlement. Adrian sat across from me in the conference room. For a moment, I saw the man I married. Then I saw the hospital hallway. "Both truths can sit in the same room," he said. "I went to Dad's grave yesterday. I waited. I read his letter again. My chest tightened. Leonard had left Adrian a letter too. I had never asked to see it. Adrian continued. He said he loved me enough not to leave me a weapon I would confuse for a crown. I looked down. That sounded like Leonard. Adrian's eyes filled. I hated him for writing that. And now I think he knew me better than I knew myself. Silence. Then he said, I am sorry, Naomi. I waited. He swallowed. For choosing Cassandra while you cared for him. For calling you useful. For leaving you alone in that hospital. For bringing her into his room. For making you stand there while I performed sonship and failed at being a son. For accusing you of manipulation when Dad saw me clearly. For making you lose a husband while you were losing him too. That last one reached the deepest place. Because yes, I had lost both at once. One to death, one to character. I hear you, I said. He wiped his face. I don't expect you to forgive me. I may one day. He nodded. Can I earn any role back in the company? There it was. I almost laughed. Not because he was manipulative this time, because even growth still had old roots. No, I said. His face fell. Not ever? Not while I am protector. Not without going through the same independent process as any outside executive. And not because of your last name. He closed his eyes. That's fair. Yes. He stood to leave. At the door, he paused. Did he suffer because I wasn't there? The question was quiet. Human. Painful. I could have punished him with details. I did not. He missed you, I said. But he was not alone. Adrian cried then. Not loudly. Just enough. Then he left. Patricia's apology came later, and took longer to trust. She invited me to tea at the east wing of the estate, where she still lived under Leonard's protections. I almost refused, then went because Leonard had loved the estate and because I wanted to see whether she could say truth without decorating it. She sat across from me with perfect posture, pearls, and eyes that looked smaller than before. I owe you an apology, she said. Yes. She blinked at my directness, then nodded. I knew Adrian was involved with Cassandra. I stayed still. I told myself it was business. Then I told myself, men under pressure make emotional mistakes. Then I told myself, you were too focused on Leonard and not enough on your marriage. My throat tightened. She continued. But the truth is, I liked Cassandra because she made Adrian look important. And I underestimated you because you were doing the work instead of performing the role. That was honest. Painfully honest. For what specifically? I asked. She closed her eyes. For encouraging him. For not correcting him. For letting you care for Leonard while I accepted your help and still judged you. For sitting quietly when Cassandra came to the hospital. For supporting the will challenge when I knew Leonard had been clear. For treating your presence as duty and Adrian's absence as pressure. I looked at her for a long moment. Thank you, she cried. I did not hug her. Not that day. Some apologies deserve acknowledgement, not immediate access. Over time, our relationship became polite and limited. She remained Leonard's widow. I respected that. She respected my boundaries because the trust required her to live inside them. Sometimes legal structure teaches what morality failed to. My own healing was slow. People thought I was powerful after the will. They saw board seats, trust authority, company decisions, legal victories, and Adrian's downfall. They did not see me waking at 3 a.m. because my body still thought the hospital phone might ring. They did not see me avoiding cream-colored coats because Cassandra had worn one that night. They did not see me sitting in Leonard's old chair at the estate, reading his letter over and over, trying to understand how being loved by someone else's father could feel more honest than being chosen by my own husband. They did not see the grief of caring deeply and being rewarded with responsibility. Power does not cancel pain. It gives pain a desk and asks it to work. So I worked. I also went to therapy. I learned that caregiving had become part of my identity because, deep down, I believed staying through someone's hardest season would prove I deserved not to be abandoned. But Adrian had abandoned me anyway. That meant the old belief had to die. Care is beautiful, but care should not be a bargain where you trade your body, time, and heart for the hope that someone will finally choose you. Leonard chose to honor me, but Adrian did not choose me. Both truths mattered. 3 years after Leonard's passing, I founded the Remaining Hands Foundation. Its purpose was simple: support unpaid family caregivers, especially daughters-in-law, daughters, wives, sisters, and older women who became invisible while caring for seriously ill relatives. We provided grants, legal guidance, respite care, therapy support, meal delivery, workplace advocacy, emergency planning, and one program I insisted on calling "Not Just Useful." Vivian laughed when she heard it. Subtle. I'm not aiming for subtle. The program helped caregivers document their labor, protect their finances, discuss estate boundaries ethically, and avoid being erased by family members who arrived at the end asking for authority after skipping the burden. At the first foundation dinner, I spoke publicly. I said, caregiving is not background work. It is not feminine instinct. It is not free because love is involved. It is labor, presence, sacrifice, and dignity. And nobody should be treated as useful in private and irrelevant in inheritance, decision-making, or respect. The room stood. I cried after leaving the stage. Not from sadness, from release. Leonard's Care Fund partnered with Remaining Hands. Cole Meridian employees volunteered. Mr. Hart served on the advisory board. Even Patricia donated quietly every year. Adrian donated once. Anonymously. Vivian figured it out anyway because she has a gift for making anonymity feel optimistic. I did not return the donation. Care work deserved the money more than my anger deserved purity. Years passed. Adrian rebuilt parts of his life, not in Cole Meridian. He started smaller, consulting for mid-level firms under outside supervision. He learned slowly that his last name no longer opened every door. He did not become poor. Leonard had not left him destitute, but he did become ordinary enough to meet himself. That may have been Leonard's intention. Cassandra married a European investor and moved between London and Dubai, according to gossip I did not ask for but somehow still received. Her billionaire life continued. Good for her. May she stay far away from hospital rooms where real love is required. I remained unmarried for a long time. Not because I hated men, because I loved peace. Eventually, I learned to build a life that did not require romantic rescue or public proof. Friends, work, foundation, travel, quiet dinners, mornings with tea, visits to Leonard's memorial garden. Even laughter. Real laughter returned slowly. The kind that begins in your chest without asking permission from grief. One day, at a Remaining Hands retreat, a woman asked me, "Do you regret caring for him, knowing what Adrian did?" I thought carefully. "No," I said. "I regret believing my care would make Adrian value me, but I do not regret giving Leonard dignity." That was the truth. Care given to the wrong witness can still be holy. Leonard had seen it. That was enough. My husband chose his billionaire mistress while I cared for his dying father. Then Leonard changed his will. People like the drama of that. The mistress. The hospital room. The billionaire. The will. The shocked son. The inheritance lost. The company control moved. The public reversal. I understand why, but the deeper story is quieter. It is about the bowl of soup, the gray blanket, the hand held at 2 a.m., the wife who became a caregiver while her marriage starved, the father who saw his son clearly and loved him enough to protect others from him. The difference between performance and presence. The danger of calling a woman useful when she is the only one keeping your world human. If you are listening and you are caring for someone right now while others perform concern from a distance, hear me clearly. Your work is real. Your tiredness is real. Your resentment does not make you bad. Your love does not mean you should be used. Your presence matters even if the family only praises the absent person with the famous last name. Write things down. Ask for help. Protect your money. Protect your health. Ask what legal authority you do or do not have. Do not let people hand you every responsibility and deny you every voice. Do not let a husband, wife, sibling, parent, or in-law treat your care like unpaid furniture in the room. And if someone chooses glamour while you are choosing duty, do not chase them. Let them go where their character is leading them. Sometimes the person in the bed sees, sometimes the nurse sees, sometimes the attorney sees, sometimes the records see, and sometimes, when the final papers are signed, the truth receives a chair at the table. Adrian thought Cassandra was his future. He thought Leonard's will was already written in his favor. He thought I would remain the tired woman in the background, too loyal to speak, too grieving to fight, too useful to leave. He was wrong. Leonard's final gift to me was not only authority, it was confirmation. He confirmed that quiet care counted, that presence mattered, that character could be seen even from a hospital bed, that a woman should not have to become loud to be valued. Today, Cole Meridian still stands. The Leonard Cole Care Fund has supported hundreds of employees. The Remaining Hands Foundation has helped caregivers in 12 states. The estate hosts leadership and caregiver retreats twice a year. Patricia remains in the East Wing, older now, kinder in ways I trust only with distance. Adrian attends the annual memorial service. He sits quietly. He does not make speeches. That is progress. I still keep Leonard's letter in my office, not framed publicly, privately. Some words are not decorations. They are anchors. To Naomi, who remained when performance left. Whenever I read that line, I remember the hospital room, the cream coat, the water cup, Adrian calling me useful, Leonard repeating the word like he had just seen his son clearly for the first time. Then his hand reaching for mine. Daughter. That word saved part of me, not because it came with money, because it came with recognition. My name is Naomi Cole no longer. I took back Bennett after the divorce. Naomi Bennett. The woman who held the hand. The woman who signed the papers. The woman who chaired the trust. The woman who turned caregiving into protection for others. The woman who finally learned that being useful is not the same as being loved, and being chosen late by truth is still better than being chosen loudly by a lie.